Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's reading from Sri Damodara Janani by His Holiness Sivarama Swami. We are reading from the introduction at the moment. Let's begin from where we left yesterday. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripatamam vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramahantam Madhavam Shri Chaitanyeshwaram Hari Om Tat Sat. One may continue to argue that Srimad Bhagavatam also contains verses proclaiming some other deity as supreme. To preface this answer, it should be understood that Srimad Bhagavatam is not a loose collection of stories or unrelated philosophical truths. It is a systematic philosophical treatise that expands the truths of Vedanta Sutra. It is also a narration of the pastimes of the Supreme Lord and his devotees that concludes in the Vrindavan sports of the source of all incarnations, Sri Krishna. Therefore, any verse that appears to be out of line with or contrary to the truths of Srimad Bhagavatam is simply a misunderstanding on part of the reader, or alternatively the author's use of esoteric language, paroksha. For example, on the strength of the word Tatram Shena Batir Nasnasya, some people argue that verse from the 10th canto, chapter 1, second verse means the Supreme Godhead appeared in this world, material world, by expanding himself, Amshena, as Sri Krishna. However, this is not the right reading of the word Amshena, which should instead be understood to mean Lord Balaram. With this proper meaning, the verse says the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, appeared in this material world accompanied by his plenary portion, Lord Baldeva. This reading is also in keeping with the Paribhasha Sutra. Obviously, if a reader approached the verse with faith in the Paribhasha Sutra, he would come to the verse's proper reading. The following is another example in which a verse of Srimad Bhagavatam appears to contradict the Paribhasha Sutra. Lord Mahavishnu said, Purna Kamav Api Yuvam Nara Narayanav Rishi Dharmam Acharatam Sthitai Rishabho Loka Sangraham. The followers of Ramanujacharya, who think that Narayan is the Supreme Lord and Krishna is his expansion, narrate the verse as, My dear Krishna and Arjun, you are both incarnations of Nara-Narayan rishis who formerly performed exemplary activities for spiritual progress. The implication of this translation is that Krishna and Arjun are incarnations of Narayan and Nara, both plenary expansions of Mahavishnu. However, Mahavishnu is the first to be described in the list of incarnations that concludes with the Paribhasha Sutra. Therefore, how in this later and evidently weaker verse can Mahavishnu be accepted as the source of Krishna? Jiva Goswami gives further reasons why Krishna cannot be an expansion of Mahavishnu. When the two arrived before Mahavishnu, Krishna did not show any sign of respect, something that would be expected when seeing a superior, thus indicating Mahavishnu's inferiority to Krishna. That Mahavishnu could not see Krishna directly at will, but had to go through extreme lengths to do so by stealing the Brahmana's sons, is a further sign of his inferiority. And when Arjun was blinded by the glare from Mahavishnu's body, Krishna restored Arjun's sight, showing that his potency was greater than Mahavishnu's, again indicating the latter's inferiority. These arguments, as well as the fact that none of our acharyas have ever accepted the above translation of Mahavishnu's words, obliges the unbiased reader to conclude that it is incorrect. The correct translation is, although all your desires are completely fulfilled, O best of exalted personalities, for the benefit of the people in general, you should continue to exemplify religious behavior as the sages Nara and Narayan. This translation indicates that Arjuna and Krishna expand themselves as Nara and Narayan, not the other way round, and they are not expansions of Mahavishnu, rather he is an expansion of Krishna. In this way, the apparent contradiction with the Paribhasha Sutra is resolved, and the proper understanding of the verse reinforces the truth that Paribhasha Sutra reigns uninterrupted throughout Srimad Bhagavatam. In this summary treatise of the Srimad Bhagavatam's Paribhasha Sutra, we have shown that all statements of Srimad Bhagavatam as well as all other Vedic literatures dealing with Krishna's ontological position should be understood in the light of the principle Ete Chamsaha Kalaha Pumsaha Krishnastu Bhagwan Swayam. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the source of all incarnations. Where a statement is ambiguous, its meaning should be made clear, and where a statement contradicts this conclusion, it should be interpreted to conform to it. In this way, the light of Krishna's unquestionable supremacy shines throughout the Vedas, confirming his own declaration in the Gita, Vedescha sarvair aham eva vedyaha. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. In conclusion, let us understand how our knowledge of the Paribhasha principle helps us better understand Krishna's 10th canto pastimes through its Paribhasha Sutra. Canto 10, chapter 8, verse 45. So the 8th question asked was, how does Srimad Bhagavatam in 10.8.45 as the Paribhasha Sutra regulate the pastimes of the 10th canto? Answer is, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, one should take this verse as a Paribhasha Sutra of Krishna Leela. It is the lens through which you view the Lord's pastimes of opulence in all of his ages, like boyhood and youth, and in all places like Mathura and Kurukshetra. What is the picture that the lens of the Paribhasha Sutra affords the reader? Srila Prabhupada replies, one may be a karmi, a jnani, a yogi, then a bhakta or prema bhakta, but the ultimate stage of realization is prema bhakti, as actually demonstrated by Mother Yashoda, or in other words, although Srimad Bhagavatam is replete with pastimes of Krishna's incarnations and of Krishna himself, pastimes which describe service to the Lord by different grades of devotees, we should know without a doubt that the highest and most perfect spiritual attainment glorified by Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Krishna and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is the kind of spontaneous, loving devotion, Ragatmika Bhakti, also known as Vraja Bhakti, that was displayed by Mother Yashoda. Now, with the vision afforded by the 10th canto Paribhasha Sutra, we can gain true insight into statements of or pastimes in Srimad Bhagavatam that seem to indicate that devotional service in or mixed with awe and veneration is the supreme attainment. Thus, we can qualify such statements to disclose the real truth, which is that the Ragatmika Bhakti of the Vrajavasis is supreme. Parikshit Maharaj immediately arrived at this conclusion as soon as he heard the Paribhasha Sutra. Thus he declared that Nanda and Yashoda are more fortunate, meaning more spiritually exalted, than Vasudeva and Devaki, although the latter are universally praised as the parents of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada expresses this same understanding in his purport to the 10.8.45 Paribhasha Sutra, where he says, Vishnu Pashana or Vishnav Aradhana, worship of Lord Vishnu, is the highest stage of perfection as realized by Devaki. But here Mother Yashoda performs no upasana, for she has developed transcendental ecstatic love for Krishna. Therefore, her position is better than that of Devaki. In order to show this, Srila Vyasadeva enunciates this verse, Traya Chopani Shadabhi, etc. When we say that Raja Bhakti is a supreme spiritual attainment, we imply that it is the prototype spiritual attainment of which all other attainments reflect but a part. That conclusion also fine-tunes the first canto's Paribhasha Sutra, wherein it is said, Krishnastu Bhagwan Swayam. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Krishna being spoken of in this verse is the son of Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda, the Krishna who lives in Vrindavan and never leaves it for a moment. Consequently, we may also conclude that the topmost and original abode is Golok Vrindavan. And by Krishna's own statement, Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam tathaiva bhajamyaham, as all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Therefore, Krishna experiences the greatest happiness when he is served by his Ragatmika Bhaktas in Vrindavan. More significant still, while yogis and jnanis try in their own ways to realize the Lord, and while regulated devotees succeed in doing so, only those following the Vrajavasis can actually control Krishna, for Krishna is controlled by pure love alone. Sanatana Goswami in his Sri Bhagavad Amrita reveals all the truths implied by the 10th canto Paribhasha Sutra in detail. Indeed, since the 10th canto is the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam, and since the Paribhasha Sutra distills that essence further, it can be said that Sri Bhagavatamrita, the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam, is a commentary on this Paribhasha Sutra. Having clarified the effect that the 10th canto Paribhasha Sutra has on the entirety of that canto, we now have a new perspective on Krishna's pastimes, the Vrajavasi's supreme love for Krishna's relatives, his relativizes his display of opulence and fully controls him. In other words, no matter which of his inconceivable potencies Krishna manifests through his pastimes, the intense love of Mother Yashoda and the Vrajavasis make them think that these extraordinary feats are the mercy of Lord Narayan or the result of previously attained piety. In the love-intoxicated state, the Vrajavasis never think that he is God. For them, Krishna remains nothing other than a cowherd boy, a village hero. And by the effects of their intense love, the Vrajavasis also succeed in making Krishna dance according to their will, for he is purchased and controlled by their love. To exemplify this extraordinary devotion and Krishna's subordination to it, Shukadev Goswami promptly describes how the wonderful workings of Mother Yashoda's love once bound Krishna to a grinding mortar. That description is called Damodar Leela. I will repeat. To exemplify this extraordinary devotion and Krishna's subordination to it, the devotion of Mother Yashoda and the Brajvasis, Shukadev Goswami promptly describes how the wonderful workings of Mother Yashoda's love once bound Krishna to a grinding mortar, and that description is called the Damodar Leela. Parikshit Maharaj found the narration of Drona and Dhara to be unsatisfying to the question, how did Nanda and Yashoda attain such intense spiritual love? With this narration, he is told, in effect, they performed no sadhana, for they are Krishna's eternal parents. And it is the unparalleled love exemplified in the Damodar Leela that qualifies Nanda and Yashoda as Krishna's parents. Like their other pastimes, this intimate exchange between Krishna and Yashoda not only heightens their mutual love, but it also enhances the love of the Vrajavasis. Similarly, those devotees who hear or read these pastimes, will feel their own devotion mature. Srila Prabhupada says, in other words, persons who follow the activities of Vrindavan will also develop devotional service in the highest perfection. This then is the purpose of this book, to present Krishna's most attractive childhood pastime, the Damodar Leela, so that the readers will become inspired to follow in the footprints of the Vrajavasis, secure the qualification for Vraja Bhakti, and ultimately attain Vraja Bhakti itself. So in the rest of the introductions, there are some notes which I will leave There is little prelude. I'll read from that. May my spiritual master, who purified the three worlds with the words emanating from his lotus mouth, sanctified the earth by touching its continents with his lotus feet, and glorified the land of Bharat with making known its spiritual cultural worldwide, bless the author of this book, his humble servant, seated beneath an immortal banyan tree, to his exalted disciple Shukadev Goswami, praise the parental love of Nanda and Yashoda, love that is eternal and ever increasing like air. Their love for Krishna pervaded Gokula, and by its influence the other Gopas and Gopis, eternal associates and recently perfected Vaishnavas alike, felt their own affection for Krishna increase. To reciprocate with his parents, Krishna enacted novel pastimes, and in that way he churned the love of all Brajavasis, bringing forth the tasty butter of unparalleled exchanges of intimacy. These exchanges between Krishna and his associates are so potent that simply by attentively hearing them, devotees acquire a perfected devotion similar to that of Brajavasis. To exemplify Krishna's childhood pastime, Shukadev Goswami narrated the best and most compelling of them all, and so Parikshit Maharaj and the other sages listened in wonder to Vyasa's son narrate the pastimes of the butter thief, who also became known as Damodar for being tied Dama by the waist, which is the Udara, to a grinding mortar. So tying is Dama and the waist is the Udara. So Damodara was tied to the grinding mortar. To the Gaudiya commentators on Srimad Bhagavatam from Srila Sridhara Swami to my Srila Prabhupada, I offer my respectful obeisances. Having studied this Damodar Leela, I have collected our Acharya's jewel-like teachings and set them as tiny bells in anklets with which to grace Lord Damodara's lotus feet. I pray that Mother Yashoda will be pleased by those ankle bells, and when dressing her son, use them to ornament him. In that way, when Krishna walks here and there along the pathways of Vrindavan, may he be satisfied to hear the sweet tinkling sound of his own pastimes, and so bless me with a smile. All glories to Chaitanya Chandra, the glistening moon of Mayapur. His soothing rays are drunk by Chakora like devotees. He dispels the clouds of ignorance arising from the ocean of Kali Yuga, and he illuminates the most secret truths of pure devotional service. May that Gaura Damodara, who is bound to his followers by the ropes of Prema Sankirtan, give me admittance into his eternal pastimes of love. My worshipable deities are Sri Sri Radha Damodar. They mercifully enter my life of their own accord and kindly accompany me in their wandering through lands. Some years after Mother Yashoda bound her son with ropes, Srimati Radharani bound her beloved with a careless glance. In such a helpless condition, Lord Krishna offered his treasured flute to her. By the grace of Lord Jagannath and Swarupa Damodar Goswami, I have the good fortune of worshipping that Radha Damodara. All glories to them. Yani yaniha gitani tad bala charitani cha dadhi nirmanthane kale smaranti tani agayata. While churning, she remembered the childish activities of Krishna, and in her own way she composed songs and enjoyed singing to herself about all those activities. Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, 9th Chapter, verse 2. Now let's begin from Chapter 1 of the book, Sri Damodara Janani. Shri Shri Yashoda Damodar ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Setting the scene. It was Dipavali, the third day of the ancient Vaishnava festival of the same name, the pageants and celebrations of which would resound through the lanes and homes of Gokula for another 2 blissful days. Festivities had first begun with the Vrajavasis cleansing and renovating their homes to receive Goddess Lakshmi, decorating doorways with colorful designs and gracing windowsills with dancing ghee lamps. But on this, the third night of the festival and the actual Deepavali day, there would be special celebrations in Nanda Maharaja's kingdom, for it was on this night, long, long ago, that Lord Ramchandra returned to Ayodhya with Sita Devi. It was a special day. The sun had yet to rise, and all was still. Gradually, as the light of dawn edged over the horizon, birds awakened, ruffled their feathers, and began singing songs in praise of the King of planets. Those songs were more delightful than the celestial mantra with which Brahmanas were greeting the sun, Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha. When the cows lowed in concert to the pleasing sounds of bird song and mantras, then the Brajavasis stirred. Mother Yashoda lay in bed with her son. Waking, she looked towards her child, his lotus eye closed in sleep, and affectionately whispered, "My blue lotus." Then, with the image of her darling still in mind, she cautiously turned to her other side and, sighing, "Blue lotus," drowsed away. Some very qualified demigods and their equally qualified wives hovered in the sky. They marveled to see the controller of numberless universes in his original Gopa form resting in the arms of his mother, and they thrilled as their affection for Krishna surged at the sight of the Lord's mother, who to the vision of mortals appeared to be just another gopi. In an attempt to rouse Yashoda Devi and so begin a new baby Krishna's pastimes, a fresh dawn breeze ascended from the cowherd village below. With the rustling of leaves, it weaved in stealth above the hill through the now open palace gates, past the many opulent rooms, and onto the first floor balcony of Yashoda's suites. Pausing in respect before entering her dawn-lit chambers, Mother Yashoda's suites were spacious. The marble-tiled bedchamber opened onto an expansive balcony that overlooked the flower garden, Gokula village beyond that, and the pastures of Mahavan. Beyond that still, inside the bedchamber, was an oversized bed, a bureau and chair, two curved divans circling a round table, and Krishna's golden cradle. The walls were made of marble, inlaid with precious and semi-precious jewels in traditional motifs, which when touched by lamplight would act as lamps themselves. Before a mirrored retaining wall between the two gold-framed doorways to the balcony was an ornate, full-height ghee lamp of 108 wicks that would illuminate the room at night. Through the glided doorway to the west was a spacious dressing salon, replete with wardrobes of silken clothes and drawers of priceless ornaments. Beyond the dressing salon was the bath chamber, to the south of which, sharing the same balcony, was the kitchen and pantry. The west of that stately reception room, both the kitchen and reception rooms led down a half flight of stairs to the grand hall of 84 pillars, the Chaurasi Stambh. Another separate exit led from the kitchen to the inner courtyard below and to the adjoining gardens that lay through a small guarded gate in the palace walls. From the garden one could follow a path through Gokul village to the Yamuna, and it was along this path that Mother Yashoda would walk for her river bath, sometimes with the baby. Gently touching Yashoda's sleeping form, the breeze whispered, "O Queen, whose good fortune is without limit, can you rest in the arms of the goddess of sleep with the cause of creation stirs by your side? Arise." Hearing this appeal, her bodily hair erect in ecstasy, little by little the beautiful wife of Nanda Maharaj awoke. Seeing that her child was still deep in slumber, she carefully raised herself and then, as if drawn by magnet, bent over to gently kiss her son's cheek. Although he did not stir in his sleep, Krishna felt the indescribable touch of love personified, and that touch caused waves of ecstasy to course through his body and mind. Bringing pictures of his mother into his dream, he sighed happily, puckered his cheeks, and then sank deeply into his pillow. Like a stately swan, Yashoda rose from the bed and tiptoed to her bath chamber, where only one of her maids in waiting was present. Still drowsy, she cast a questioning glance at the young girl, then remembering that the palace servants were preparing for Deepavali, she nodded her head knowingly. It would be a gorgeous festival. After bowing to the queen, the maidservant skillfully seated her on a dais, exchanged her nightgown for a bathing dress, and proceeded to remove her pure cosmetics and scented kajal. Thereafter she wiped Yashoda's hair with a soft wet cloth, loosened her long braid, and carefully combed it so that her hair rested flat on her back. While washing Yashoda's feet, the young gopi said, "Everyone is so excited about making this Deepavali festival special." Yashoda replied in a whisper, "Why do they want it to be so special? Because your son Krishna is now old enough to relish such events. Everyone wants to please him. That is kind of them. Because of the love they bear for Krishna, service streams spontaneously from their hearts." Yashoda accepted the mouthwash offered her and began to brush her teeth with a eucalyptus twig while the girl mixed herbs and scents into the bath water. After rinsing her mouth and discarding its contents into a spittoon, Yashoda Devi closed her eyes as the maidservant massaged her limbs with aromatic oils, washed her hair and then bathed and dried her. During all this, they spoke. "Sundari, go see if my son is still sleeping." Peeking into the bedchamber, she replied, "Even at such a young age, he resembles a resting god. That is what the sage Garga concluded, that he would be as good as Narayan." Yashoda Devi nodded her head. "Because my transcendental son is exactly like Lord Narayan in qualities, opulence, fame, and influence, Garga Muni told us to raise him very carefully." "Oh, I'm so excited. Just hearing these things make my hair stand on end. Since my son has appeared in our town, there seems to be some special magic that makes everyone's heart thrill with joy even at the most trying times." "Yes," replied the maid. "It is as if we have been transported to Vaikuntha or beyond. And through these unceasing waves of happiness, your Krishna and his sports seem to flourish in our minds in such a way that we can think of nothing else. Is that bad?" The queen teased, her voice rich with pride. "Not at all. It is delightful, except that when we are lost to thoughts of his pranks, we are prone to be late for duties, or worse, we tend to spoil them like burning meals." Gently slapping the girl's cheek, Mother Yashoda smiled. "Oh, you exaggerate. You are making excuses for burning my son's milk. Hurry and dress me." But with Yashoda's bath completed, the maidservant brought forth a petticoat, a saffron yellow sari, and matching choli. She then brought a large tray of ornaments laden with jewel rings, anklets, bracelets, and necklaces of gold. Following the Deepavali tradition, the clothes and ornaments were new. Nanda Maharaj personally saw to it, and when the servant girl, distracted by her own Krishna Leela chatter, proved too slow, Mother Yashoda dressed herself. Onwards tomorrow with a reading of Damodara Janani. Thank you for joining. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.